places where I don't have this physical space to dance. So I want to think of myself as a free spirit, that whatever constraints I have in daily life, something in my spirit feels light, feels free. I would say dancer, lover of music, poet, if not in life, then at least in my mind.
Okay, thanks very much. I'll continue provoking you so that we get to the heart of the matter. We really want to know who Rudo is. Yes, you've mentioned that you're a free spirit, that, that perhaps is so. You're a feminist, you're a scholar, you're an activist, you are a mother, you're a friend, you're a sister, you are many things. But I think the most important thing here is that you're a free spirit. Let me go to Joyce. Who is Joyce? When you woke up this morning, who were you and who are you today?
I am Joyce, like you said, my name. So I woke up still Joyce, and I am a mover. When I woke up, I moved. And I am soul. When I woke up, I felt my body, my spirit, and my presence. That's me.
And you're a yogi?
Yes, I am.
Who taught
I'm a dancer, I'm a yogi. No, please hold. I make people feel connected to their bodies. I make them feel present and, get back to life and feel that they're themselves with the fact that they love what they do and they're present at that particular moment. Yes. I don't torture.
You have tortured me. Anyway, okay, thanks very much, Joyce. Joyce is a yogi, she's a mother as well, she's an activist, she's a feminist, and as she says, she enables most of us to get back into our bodies. And who am I? I'm a combination of Joyce. I'm a mild of Joyce and Rudo. I'm not as wild as they are. I'm a very humble and simple woman. In the feminist movement, I'm known as Miss Hope. My homes are in Zimbabwe and in Uganda. I come from the mountains. I come from people of the mountains. We dance, we sing, we carry heavy things, we work very hard, and that's who I am. So the three of us are your facilitators for today. We come to you not as people who know everything. We come to you as learners, facilitators, as witches who cause beautiful trouble. We come to you as people who have been working very hard on the well-being of our organizations and our bodies. So we are here to talk about the politics and practice of wellness. Why should we be talking about the politics of wellness and the practice of it in a world where that should be taken for granted? It should, but it's not. We carry patriarchal baggage. We carry, some of us, I think most of us carry, colonialism baggage. We carry, the burden of fighting for rights in a disempowering environment. We carry the burden of our movements in a world that we have not rendered perfect, a world that does not accept us for who we are. We carry, and when we carry these things, many times we forget that we have to be well in order to promote wellness. And many times we forget that wellness is the work that we really promote. If we promote it and if we do it, it should start with us. Because if transformation doesn't start with us, we can't fight for it out there in the world. So that's why we are here to talk about well-being, subjects that have been demonized, subjects that are a subject that is never budgeted for, a subject that doesn't seem to be important, does not appear in our strategic plans, does not appear on the walls of organizations, does not appear in our reports, and yet this is what we fight for in the world. We are activists, we are mothers, we are single, we are married, we have got different sexual orientation things. And as we struggle in different spaces, we tend to forget our well-being. So we are here to emphasize that well-being is important, and each one of us needs to think about the politics of wellness. So to kick off the discussion is Rudo Chigudu. You heard her describe herself. So Rudo, over to you.
I think mine really are questions, and my questions are questions for Hope, because Hope has spent a great deal of time really thinking and exploring the ideas of wellness. And I think one of the first things that comes to mind is that one of the main critiques of work around wellness that I encountered when I myself started doing this work was about the luxury, or the luxury to deviate from the core work that we are supposed to be doing as activists, as feminists, as movers and shakers, rebels, radicals, and that there was this luxury of just being able to deviate and focus on something different. And I think the one thing that has come up repeatedly for me is the idea that wellness is the work. So whilst it is a tool, it is actually the work. When we talk about social justice in the world, that is the well-being of the world, the well-being of communities, of society, of the earth. So in whatever realm of work, whether it's politics or the economy or it's bodies or it's the earth, everything about that is seeking that all those realms be well in ways that hold us, our lives, and our beings. So I think for me that's the thing that comes to the fore. But what I have is a question for Hope, because I'm curious about what the journey that brought you to this kind of work is. How did you land? So we know wellness matters. We are all concerned about wellness, but what lands you in the space where, why is this work important for you when you think about the work of wellness? Yeah.
You are setting me up. That's not what we agreed you to ask. Rudo, to begin with, and for all the sisters that are here, wellness is having a festival like the one we are having now. Can you imagine, South Festival, us talking about our situation, talking about the way we present ourselves in the world, talking about the right we have to walk in this world, and organizing it, and here we are starting. So let's go like, woo! The festival is here, and this is really a festival, and it's organized by us, South Feminists. And for me, this is part of well-being. It shows how far we have come. Imagine, 10 years ago, which, feminists from the South would have the permission, social permission, even intellectual, even, professional permission to talk about wellness. But this time we are not even seeking permission. We agreed that this is what we are going to do, and we are doing it. And there are a series of discussions that celebrate us, that question, that respond, that really interrogate. And for me, this is part of wellness. Many years ago, we started talking about wellness because funders were talking about sustainability of organizations. Nowhere in their demands were they talking about sustainability of the people who work in those organizations, the women human rights defenders, the activists, the feminists, those words, those names did not appear, in their demand for sustainability. It was all about money, and when we stop funding, how are you going to sustain yourselves, as if they can sustain themselves without funds. So the question was, for me then, and that time I was with the Urgent Action Fund Africa, the question was, what does sustainability mean? Can an organization sustain itself? And as I thought about sustainability very deeply, there was the day-to-day reality. But there was also sustainability of what it means to come from, to have a colonial history and be part of that, to operate with patriarchal structures, to operate with organizations where money doesn't usually come from us. We put in so much. Anyway, I think we put in money, indirectly, but somehow we get money from the funders, and they are funder demands. The struggle with very, very difficult issues. Imagine difficult issues of race, difficult issues of sexual orientation, difficult issues of talking about patriarchy in a world that, that is still very, very, patriarchal, working very hard for rights where women's rights were not regarded as human rights, a lot of issues. And I asked myself, how can one sustain oneself in the midst of all these struggles that we have on our table? And I remember, back then within the Urgent Action Fund, the question was, they kept asking, what do you mean? What do you mean by sustainability? What do you mean? And I tried to explain it the way I'm explaining it now, but that was not the language, that was not the discussion. But eventually it became very clear, and someone called Jane is Canadian, she did a study on how feminists sustain themselves. It's entitled, What's the Point of a Revolution If We Can't Dance? You said you're a dancer. Yeah, I've seen you dancing like a piece of paper being blown by the wind. But anyway, we started talking about that, and she did the study, and I think the study raised many issues of guilt when we take care of ourselves, issues of pain when we go into the past, issues of the way we are treated by our funding partners, issues of how fighting patriarchy can land you in prison, and many sisters, as we talk, some of them are in prison, issues of how we can move away from the log frames that don't talk about wellness, issues of how we carry our pain in our organizations and in our movements, issues of how on a day-to-day basis we struggle with salaries. You're heading an organization, how do you pay staff? You're a staff member, you are not sure if you are going to be there tomorrow. We talked about issues of operating in a world that really doesn't like us very much. Feminists are not very popular. I hope you know that. So we talked about that. And we talked about the fights also that come from that. Because, when you are stressed by so many issues, you can become violent, actually. And the first person you chew, the first person that you eat is the person sitting next to you. And this will be another sister. So we carry the world breaks us down, the world fragments us, and we carry our broken fragments into our organizations and our movements. We blame ourselves, but we forget that the day-to-day struggles actually, are responsible for that. So that's how I got into this, questioning, where does sustainability come from? What does it mean? How can we deal with both historical factors? How can we deal with the day-to-day realities? How can we deal with issues of language? How can we deal with demands from funders? How do we deal with organizational structures that are created or fashioned, alongside the patriarchal structures, where you have got head of the family, you're a director, then you've got deputy, you're a wife, then you've got program officers, the sons, then you've got assistants, the daughters, and you go down to the children, those structures that also sustain and wellness. Because when you are one of the children, you're at the bottom, you have no voice. So issues of voice came in, issues of money came in, issues of structures and policies came in, so many things that we really need to consider and deal with. So Rudo, one of my frustrations today, as I sit here with you, is that many times we think that well-being is about buying chocolate, eating chocolate, buying a new dress and wearing it, absenting. Yes, perhaps some of those things are okay, but well-being is deeply political and it's very important, and we have to take it into the work that we do and actually engage with it, create time to engage with it and understand what it means. Because again, well-being is contextual. Perhaps some of the things I've mentioned are not, common, might not be common in Europe. They were not colonized, we were. Some of the things I've mentioned had solutions. If we were looking at African, solutions, Asian, solutions, Latin America solutions, third world solutions. So that is what it is. So well-being is very contextual. It also depends on where we are. If we are talking about organization, the stage of growth, it depends on what movement we are talking about. It depends on us as individuals, because it really starts with us, because the person is political. It also depends on what journeys we've walked and where we are. So that's it, Rudo.
Thank you, Hope. As you spoke and started to talk about some of the baggage that we carry, I thought back to about 2 days ago when I was traveling from South Africa to Zimbabwe. And when I put my bag to be weighed, it was overweight. And when I packed, I was sure, I was sure that that the things in my bag were the right weight. And so there was a part of me that wondered, like, did anybody else put things in my bag, or where has this other luggage? How can my few clothes, be the explanation or the reason for this kind of weight? But when I was thinking about it more deeply, actually, particularly in relation to wellness, I thought about the ways in which our journeys in life, the baggage that we carry. And I thought about the conscious baggage, the things that heartbreak I had, that sister that disappointed me when, that job that didn't work out, all these things that are very, very much in my present consciousness. And then I thought a little bit more about the things that are further back further back from the consciousness. And you started to talk about some of those things already, which is what is the additional baggage that I'm unaware of consciously that's resulting from a colonial inheritance, what it means to have been raised by parents who had the trauma of war, the trauma of colonialism, the traumas of being told that they were nothing, and them bringing me into a world where they hoped for something better for me. But in the process, they were also trapped between what their aspirations, hopes, dreams were, and what the realities of their lives were, what the colonial grip on them. And so growing up somewhat, almost schizophrenic, where my parents wanted me to speak English well, because speaking English, I had access in the world. And at the same time, this idea of being separated, or the neglect of what my language and my culture might have been. So a lot of the issues around what is the backstory? What is it that patriarchy has done to me slowly, subconsciously, in my own experience, and the ways in which I continue to reproduce it because I've internalized it. Coming to a place of acknowledging, and you said this already, that acknowledging that we are not the way we are not broken and fragmented because we are nasty, because we've done something wrong. We are the products of our contexts and our circumstances. And so what does it mean to take pause? And for me, this is where the wellness question comes. What does it mean to take pause and think back to what are the things accumulated over time, consciously, subconsciously, unconsciously, that make me who I am, that influence how I see myself, how I see the world, how I interact with others, how I show up for me and how I show up for community. And so for me, there are many, many questions. I remember hearing my mother when my daughter was doing a backflip she was about 3 or 4 in her little skirt, and she was attempting a backflip. And my mother was telling her that girls don't do that, because her tiny little 3-year-old underwear was showing and there were people around. And I thought about what that means for the way she experiences herself and that body and that being, if these are the messages that she's constantly hearing as she goes through life. And I became starkly aware that I myself was a product of exactly that. I had been told those things repeatedly. And so showing up in the world where certain privileges, class privileges, exist for some people, I had to consciously come to the realization that there are things that on a day-to-day basis, I have to fight for, I have to assert, I have to tell myself that I am worthy of being in this space. I am worthy of this life in ways that other people don't necessarily have to. In ways my brothers, I believe, don't question themselves. In ways I believe whiteness doesn't question itself. And so if I am coming as an accumulation of both my present circumstances and my history, and you are the same, coming as a product of that, and the next and the next and the next, what does it mean for the community that we create? What does that mean for the organizations that we build? And so mine, I have no answers. You are here as the senior witch hope. And so I pose this. I pose this as a question to you, that in the recognition of the accumulated pain, trauma, even joys, even privilege, because we are not only the result of pain and trauma, we're also the result of our privileges and many other things, both positive and negative. But in the recognition of those things, when you look at the world as we exist, at organizations as they exist, what is the work that needs to be done? So I know we've said it as wellness, right, which is a shortcut for what we need to be doing. But in more tangible or in deliberate ways, what might that work of wellness look like to offset those present and historical circumstances that land us in these places where we are? And not just for you, I think for many others, right, who are present in this moment, reflecting on what is possible for us. What do we need to do or think about?
Rudo, you can be malicious, but I've known you to be that every now and again, making my life difficult. But I've also known you to be a warrior and a fighter in spite of all the things that you've said. So I'll attempt to respond to some of the questions you've raised. And, to begin with, I think we need to visit the past. We assume that wellness is an individual journey. Yes, the person is political, and we start from there, individual journey. But at the same time, wellness is collective. Being well is collective because of what you've said. You cannot dismantle the structures by yourself. You cannot dismantle structures with other people, the power of the collective. And the power of the collective is built because, when you're in the collective, it doesn't just happen. We build movements, we build, support systems. And then we go to our organizations, and our wellness starts from there. I've seen Shirata, on as one of the participants. She talks about creating creating societies we want out there, and starting within our own organizations. Creating a world that we want, but starting with our own organizations. She says, if you cannot create that world where you were, there is no guarantee that you create it out there. So going back, visiting the past, what happened? What is the history? Importance of history, as a feminist, really issue. What is the history of your country, of the region, of the continent, wherever you are, whether it is Asia, whether it is Latin America, Caribbean, Africa, wherever you are, what is the history? And what did your ancestors inherit from that history? We go to our mothers and our fathers. What did they inherit from that history? What genes did they pass on? What is the history of our own organizations? Where did they come from? How did we enter these organizations? And what did we carry, from the past that continues to haunt us? We've gone to our families where we, where we are born. What is the history? These are questions we don't even ask. Imagine writing a proposal to a fund and saying you want to find out the history of your family, of your community, of the country. Who will fund you? So we run away from that. But what is the history of the organization? What is the history of the family where you were born? What is your own history? So history, which we don't talk about very much, plays a very important part in the work that we do. We have got to understand our history. We also need to understand who packed our luggage. You've talked about traveling from South Africa to Zimbabwe. Rudo, who packed your luggage, and what surprised you when you found that you are carrying excess baggage? What was it that was excess? And I'll come back to this question. Don't think you'll get away with it. But I want to know, what excess baggage you carry and who packed it for you. What surprised you, when you opened? Did you put in stones that were not supposed to be in your bag and which were not necessary? Did you put in bags of rice, which were not necessary? Well, I mean, Zimbabwe is hard, but we have rice. You don't have to carry it from South Africa. Did you put in your baggage emotional pain that, you are not even aware of? So, Rudo, it seems that as we walk in the world, we carry excess baggage, and sometimes we are not aware of it. Even this colonialism we are talking about on a day-to-day basis, sometimes we are not aware of it. The history, of our families and what they went through, and especially talking about those countries that went through colonial struggles. And I think many of us did, many of our countries did. What happened? How did this come to be? What is the impact on our lives on a day-to-day reality? We can talk about language, the language that we use. Even now, is it our language? What have we lost through language? We can talk about the food that we are eating. What food has got an impact on energy? What kind of food are we eating? Who packed it in our luggage? We didn't, we woke up and we are carrying cakes and, when I love cakes and whatever else we are carrying, and that is okay. But, what is our traditional food that used to give energy? Who, when we were packing, forgot to pack the power of community, building a community. Look at the way we try and build communities, but somehow, again, this doesn't seem to be a priority because we cannot move alone. Feminism is about the collective, but where is the community that we are moving with? A community where we go and say, hey, sister, things are not working today. Can you support me? A community where if a child is sick, you have got a community, and I know, Rudo, you've got that community. So who packs our luggage? We have to first identify who packed the luggage. What did they put in the luggage that we didn't invite? What did they include in the luggage that could land us in trouble? And many of us have actually landed in trouble. What is in the luggage that can land us, that can make us end up in hospitals? And we have. What is in the baggage that has made us forget our culture way of being? What is in the luggage that has forgotten us, that has made us forget the food we used to eat that was wholesome, that was energy giving, prana, that energy, the vital energy that we need. What is it in that luggage? So yes, going back into history, going back into the present, going back into our organizations and identifying that which we are carrying, which is not ours, which was imposed, which we need to get rid of, and creating the time to identify and get rid of it. Yeah. I can imagine what was in your bag.
A lot of things that I didn't need. I realized I was carrying people, as you said, right? Because some of it is, this idea of lack, the fear of where am I going and what won't I find when I get there. So carrying things I didn't need to carry because what I was actually carrying within myself was fear. And so this accumulation of things that, as you say, didn't need to be there. There's an interesting thing, and I think it was actually you, Hope, who brought up the idea of care, of well-being as individual and well-being as being collective. And you were talking about the idea that care is that there's the assumption that there's an individual and there's a collective, and yet the collective, the individual is a continuation, or the collective is a continuation of the individual. Yeah. These two things are inextricably linked. And so I'm wondering a little bit when you think about the connection between the individual and the collective. And I think in your words, or in the language that you used, you talked about how wellness is important, but can become a burden. Self-care, as a burden. And could you say a little bit more about the ways in which you see self-care manifesting as potentially burdensome and not just self-indulgence and self-pampering? Hope you are muted.
Is it okay? Yeah, we promote individual self-care as a solution, to most of our problems. And that is, very important. But at the same time, if you consider some of the things that we have identified here, how does an individual deal with, with those issues? There is that futile struggle to solve own problems rather than collective, correcting the, think about the systems that have led us to where we are, thinking about history that has led us to where we are, collecting this. So when you are depressed, people say, okay, why don't you go and hug a tree? And I believe in hugging trees. But, hugging a tree might help me for a few minutes. It's interesting. But at the same time, it may not help it might not, help me in supporting some of the bigger struggles that we have. So I think that there is, because it's very difficult to be isolated in this struggle, solve our own problems, rather than to collectively change the systems causing the harm. And I know, Rudo, I know the person who is political. I know the person who is important. When I wake up every morning, I have to struggle with me. I'm not thinking about the wider system. I think very much about how I'm going to make it through the day. And sometimes I breathe, all those breathing exercise. I stretch, about that. I walk, in nature, the importance of that. I journal, I sit and write a letter to myself talking about me and what I carry in my body. I do so many things for self. I have got a gratitude jar, you have seen it. I have got, a vision board, it. But at the same time, there are some issues that I cannot deal with because they are too big for me. The mountain cannot be created by one person. We need the power of the collective, and this is where our connection comes in. The connection between well-being, individual, and the collective. That as individuals, we shouldn't be so much burdened with so much and think we can resolve it. We need to have movements that we can move with. We need to have our own organizations that can support us. We need to, work with our countries so that we can address some of the big issues that come from the North or come from, the demands that come from international funders. We need that. We need the power of the collective. I can do so much, but to change the systems causing the harm, we need so many people so that they can move the mountain of the issues that we have identified already. You identified, already, and I identified already, so that, we continue bringing well-being, into the movement as a catalyst, as a way of managing, the movement. So sometimes in the movement, we are very happy with each other. And as I've said, we treat each other, we fragment each other, and we blame ourselves. And even the world will say, oh, it's Rudo who caused it, it's Hope who caused it. But honestly, we are dealing with issues that are much bigger than ourselves. And unless we stop every now and again, stop and ask ourselves, so what is happening here? What is it that is ungrounding us? Why are we not grounded? Can we identify issues that unground us and make the discussion very, very political so that we can revisit the past, the present, and even think about the future? Well-being, I'm afraid, at individual level can go this far and no more.
Thank you, Hope. I would like to pause, maybe if there are, in fact, just for participants who might have questions or comments, we'll turn to the floor just in a minute. But before that, I think one of the things I just wanted to add was also in reflecting, one of the things that has come up for me is a pattern or a trend around individualism. So individual accountability too. My mother said that, like, God would strike me dead because I said the problem with the world is people have developed individual accountability to God or to a divine force. And we've forgotten to be accountable, or we've stopped being accountable to each other and to the collective. It is not the earth that we're accountable to. It is not each other, the other people that we're accountable to. People are sitting in corners and saying, because I have paid a tithe or because I've done XYZ, I am being accountable to a divine entity. And I think there's something in the individual, not just individual care for self, but in the individual, seeing yourself as accountable to no one around you. But another power or a higher power. And I know I feel like it's an unfortunate consequence of some of the discourses, right? So a human rights discourse, for example, which is very individual in the approach to the things that I have a right to access XYZ. In ways that were necessary. We know where this came from. We know it came from the fact that there were groups of people, there were individuals who were seen and continue to be seen as less than. And so the idea, the need to assert those individual rights of people made sense. But I think there's something in the process that needs to be thought about. What are the things that we are losing as we become increasingly individual in the way we see, in the way we account? And this question is not for you. is really, I think, a collective question. It's really a collective question around the issue of accountability, because I see the collective is not just about the collectively holding each other, supporting each other, because I can say I have a right to do XYZ and I can take care of myself. But when COVID hit and I had to isolate for 2 weeks and not leave the house, I was dependent on another human being bringing food to my door and leaving it there. So this idea of being a self-sustaining ecosystem, about working hard enough to be able to do this and that, really couples. And so I think the idea of self, whilst valid and important, has moments of complete disintegration, of being in labor and needing someone to catch. I know there are super women who've delivered on their own also, but this very idea that we exist in a world where we are sustained really by the existence of each other. And so the way of being that we are promoting and seeking out really are ways of being that are about enhancing that collectivity. But that said, I think maybe hope if we stop and see if there are any comments or questions from participants.
Thank you. Thank you. So the participants out there, we are inviting you to share your views, to share your experiences, to share your madness, share your craziness, share your witchcraft. Come and share with us, because we understand the power of sisterhood.
Srilata, I see you have a hand up. You can go ahead.
Shri, one of the most famous witches and friendly.
Hello.
Hello, wow, nice to see you.
Hi, I hope I'm audible.
Hi, Shri.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, and we are very happy to hear you.
No, I had actually put my question in the Q&A panel, but anyway, thank you for giving me an opportunity. So first of all, I want to say that, everything that both of you have shared has deeply resonated. And, I really, really wanted to be here for this webinar. What I wanted to share is the thought that came into my mind hearing both of you is that, at least in South Asia, I'm sure this is true in other cultures as well, but in our culture, it's, I feel, quite extreme. There is a way in which the whole cultural environment, there is a culture of valorizing and aggrandizing sacrifice and self-harm as a sign of devotion, whether it is to God. As you know, many of the yogis did these penances, standing on one foot, sitting and meditating in the rain and the cold and that sort of thing. So there's this valorization of self-harm, and for women especially, valorizing sacrifice. That, really the highest kind of woman is one who will starve herself to feed her family, who will undergo great pain and suffering for her children and so on. And what I saw, especially in a slightly earlier phase of the women's movement in India, is that this got very unconsciously internalized in the way we approach activism, So to even talk about wellness or self-care was a sign that you were not truly committed, and that you were a very self-indulgent, self-centered person, and you bothered more about yourself than the movement. So there was this promotion of a culture of sacrifice even in the feminist movement that actually silenced any, for a very long time, And it's really the younger feminists in the last 10 years who I think have broken through that particular wall of silence and have started. And so I've heard a lot of older feminists. So I just wanted to bring in both the the cultural dimension and the intergenerational dimension. I've heard a lot of older feminists criticize, and very sharply and harshly, younger feminists, because they want the weekend off and they want to dance and they want to party and they want to have a good time. They are not dedicated the way we were. So I feel that this has really delayed and complicated dealing with issues of our wellness. And the way Rudo put it at the beginning, that wellness is actually the natural aspiration of every being, every life form, and but look at a culture that has glorified self-harm.
Rudo, thanks so much, and as I've said before, really nice to see you. Rudo, would you like to comment as a young woman who would take oppression and who want to go dancing? I belong to that generation that asks, how could you, when we haven't submitted our reports, why didn't you spend a night at the office? Don't you understand that people sacrificed for you? Don't you know where we come from? Don't you know the work we've been doing? How dare? So would you like to comment?
No, I would not. Oh, the ungrateful generation. That's
yes.
I think there are definitely ways in which the world has evolved, and finding the balance. Like I said, this idea of individualism is a real thing. You see it even with media and the internet, because I can just post what I think or what I feel. I can be a celebrity on Twitter in ways that create individual glory, individual activist illusion of success. And so I think there's something to think about in terms of exactly that, the rooting and the collective cause. What is it we are actually seeking to achieve in the world, and what's the work that needs to be done to do that? And obviously the ways of getting there, as I said, are changing, but I think there's also need for caution to do that in ways that really stay true to what the collective cause is. I see we have a few questions. I'm going to read them out, hope and see if, I'll read them out and then we'll take it from there. There's a question. My question is, how do we make wellness radical enough to be communal and not selfish? How can we navigate the difficulties of accessing funding for wellness? The issues you raise regarding capturing our her stories to help ground us better. I like to think as my community, to think of my community as a body and myself as a part of that body. So even in talking about taking care of myself, I cannot divorce it from the community. When I drink water to relieve my thirst, my whole body benefits. A beautiful comment there. There's a question, Nancy is asking, how has the COVID crisis changed the way or your thoughts about wellness? And then, I am an Asian and I find it a bit odd that one of the speakers introduced herself as Black African, because being a Black is a color and a very American identity. My question is, why don't Africans see themselves as African? Because there's a great deal of culture in your heritage. Very interesting discussion as women have to live with how we are brought up and our families and how much girls and women should behave. I think that's one for me. And then how do we find the right balance between the individual and the collective well-being in terms of rights and discourse? So those are the questions we have in the Q&A bar. And so if you can take on what you can, and then
I'll go through some very quickly, and then you can come in, Rudo. Some, of course, I can't. I don't have all the answers. I'm also struggling like everyone else. But making making wellness communal, I think we are really communal societies. Whether we are talking about Asia, whether we are talking about Africa or Caribbean, we are communal societies. But that communality was taken away from us, and we need to claim it. If I think about Africa, women fetched water together, they made pots together, they make other handcrafts together, and they have always been communal. I don't think there is a society, or a tribe or whatever in Africa that is not communal. And we need to claim that, because if we don't create communities of support, it's going to be harder and harder. There are going to be times when you'll be going through transitions, times when you will not be well, I mean as in sickness, times when you are aging the way I am, times when you are working and things are not gelling and you need a community. So we need to reclaim communal ways of being, creating our own communities of support. We need to do that. And most of our communities have always been artistic. We promote art. I cannot imagine a function in Africa or Asia where dancing is not the normal way of being. Even Latin America, Caribbean, we dance, we sing, even when we are unhappy, we do these things. But somehow we've not included this in our movement. Well, sometimes yes, but not always, consciously remembering that this is what sustained, our communities. This is the way we survived colonialism. If it wasn't for the communities that we created, I doubt very much that would have survived colonialism, would have survived COVID. And I see Nancy, has asked a question about COVID crisis. And I can give, a personal testimony. I'm in Uganda. I came here for a few weeks, and I'm here for 9 months because lockdown found me here. But I survived because of the feminist community here in Uganda, people who really, paid attention, to me. But you also need to have rituals that sustain us. And I think someone has brought up the issue of rituals. When it is in organizations, in our communities, we have always had rituals that sustain us. If there are rituals of dancing, if there are rituals of brewing beer, if there are rituals of eating together, if there are rituals of just holding hands, we need those rituals to ensure that, we really build, a spirit of community for support. During the COVID crisis, it became very, very clear that it's very difficult to support as an individual, survive as an individual, and wellness became the thing. Rudo, I've been surprised to see the West talking about wellness and, getting money from this, promoting and all, but we have known about wellness from, HIV and AIDS, movement. The women that supported us during HIV and AIDS still there, but they survived, and Africa survived because of those, communities that they built, communities of support. And I think I can say the same for Asia, but they're talking about it as if it is new. But we know the importance of building communities of support. During COVID, some people actually capitalized on those communities of support. COVID taught us that much as we sit and do strategic plans, we also need to think about things that just happen. Things we've not budgeted for, we need to have urgent funds. And I think COVID taught us that issues of trust, they might be important, here and there, but quite honestly, when these very rich people got sick, Of course, they were treated differently and they had different hospitals, but we also saw them struggling. I hope they have questioned issues of class, issues of locality, geographical locality, and I hope that we too have had time to think about the way we work in this world. So COVID introduced another way of working, the way we are working right now. And again, it becomes very clear that we can't survive without technology. We need this technology, to manage. And I think as we move into the future, this is going to be one of the key things. We also realize that organizations of the future have got to be agile. They have got to be present. They have got to be ready for any, changes that might happen. So with difficulties of funding wellness, I think the problem is naming the language that we use. When we talk about wellness, we are really talking about human resources and sustaining those human resources. Do we even have to say, wellness? It's part of sustaining organizations. Wellness is part of building sustainable organizations. It's part of ensuring that we'll be here tomorrow. So why do we have to name it that way? Even now, we are calling it wellness, but it's more than that. Or it's that, but it's part of what we are supposed to be building. This is the work. Isn't it what we are working for, Rudo? Yeah, this is the work. And, in terms, about introducing, it might be me who introduced myself as an African. I don't know. I think I'm an African. I mean, we also have been influenced by colonialism. We've been influenced by regionalism. We've been influenced by many things and politics of identity. I think that's a long story that I want to go into. But should I take that, question into consideration? So I want to hand over to you or other people who have got questions or who have got responses to the questions that have been raised. But before I go is that for me, COVID, for me and perhaps for some of my other sisters, introduced us to individual well-being. What it means to take care of me, because I was in isolation, I was on my own, though I had a community of support, but I learned how to take care of me. And I wrote about rituals for self-care. And we can share, we can share that later on, because there are times when you're alone, even when you are not, even when you are with a collective, when you do take care of yourself, because it starts with you, and then it goes to others. It's important that we don't go to people very, very, very broken, that we cause harm.
Thank you, Hope. I'll respond quickly, I think, to two questions, and then there are a couple that I've missed. And in terms of time check, I see that we have about 20 minutes left. So need to push through that. I think part of my response is to the question, Shri, you raised about valorizing sacrifice. And this celebration of self-sacrifice. And I think the thing that comes to mind in that regard is that it continues because it's been rewarded. It's been rewarded in various ways. If it is funding, the more people give of themselves and get arrested and then the more funding that comes to an organization. To an institution. So I think there's something that's harmful about the way in which we celebrate practices that might be detrimental or unhealthy by rewarding them. And that's not to say we must not acknowledge hard work, but I think there are ways in which unhealthy ways are being rewarded, and that's unhelpful to the cause. The question about calling myself Black is rooted, really, like we said at the beginning, in histories and context. I never saw myself really as Black until I was amongst people that saw nothing but my Blackness. And so I say to many people, I came to feminism because I grew up seeing the injustices that were gendered. And then moving into a society where my race became front and center, the prejudice, the discrimination, all the things that came at me because when you set eyes on me, I am Black, became an issue. And so for me to ignore that identity is to ignore a part of myself. My life experiences have been formed and influenced by this very visual experience of who I am. And so, yeah, for me, that's really why it's important, because I feel the more parts of our identities are attacked, the more they come to the front. And for me, race in that way has come to the front as a result of those experiences. I'll just quickly go. I think Claire is asking, in many ways, the politics of this issue has been watered down. How do we prevent the feminist principles of wellness from being appropriated by others? And then I really liked what Hope said about self-care rituals and the acceptance that sometimes those are not enough to make the load lighter. Where do we find the resources, the networks, where feminists are building wellness as a collective? Examples would be helpful for those who are not part of the networks yet. And then there's a question, is there a standardized tool to measure wellness? Yeah, I hope I haven't missed any other questions. Yeah, no, there's also a question, how do we find the right balance between the individual and the collective care? But I think that's been responded to, actually. Hope, do you want to take on any of those questions before we transition?
Yes, wellness is contextual. It's individual and it's collective. And when we talk about wellness, we are thinking about the body, we are thinking about the spirit, we are thinking about the soul, and we're also thinking about the relational, how we interact with other people. So it's a big topic. And at individual level, you decide, when you talk about physical well-being, what are you talking about? When you talk about spiritual well-being, what is it? When you talk about emotional, when we talk about relational, what is it for you? We can only provide tools, but you do have, to customize them to meet your needs. There are resources that are out there. One of the resources is the one that Rudo and I wrote about building organizations with a soul, and we can share it, on this forum. It's free, you can download it. But there are also many, many others, that have been written. What is the point of a revolution if you can't dance? And, I don't know, there are so many that, can be shared. And then, the politics, yes, politics of wellness have been watered down, and so have been the principles of that. And I think this is why we are going back into history, that sometimes we need to understand our history. It's not just about getting a chocolate. A chocolate is nice. I wish I could have a chocolate right now. But that is not enough. We need much more than that. And we need to incorporate this in the work that we do. What I find very difficult even today is that organizations think about wellness as a separate issue. They don't see it as a way of being, the way we should be, the way organizations, are. They don't see it as a political issue that we are fighting for. Because when we fight about rights, what are we fighting for? When we fight about, when we fight for rights, of, abortion, the right to choose, When we talk about sexual orientation, what are we talking about? We are talking about our wellness, but we need to name it and say this is what it is. We don't want to separate it, or we don't want to promote it as a different agenda, different from the work that we do. It should be part of the work that we do, and we should fundraise for it as indeed the part that we do. Even if wellness has not been politicized, let's raise it as one of the programs in women's human rights defenders. Let's raise it as improving the human resources of our organizations. Let's find ways of incorporating it into everything. There are no standardized way of being well. It is all up to the individual. My rituals, the things I do every morning when I wake up at individual level, might work for me, but not for you, Rudo. They might not work for the sisters here. So you just have got to know them, and we can share some of the rituals that we are using with you, but we can't say this works, this doesn't work. For some, as I've said, journaling is okay. For others, hugging trees, it's okay. For others, walking in nature is okay. For others, setting boundaries, that's what works for them. And it can't also be one strategy, it's a combination of strategies. So rituals are important because they enable you to eventually identify what works for you. Rudo?
I think that is a brilliant place to stop. Thank you. I'll actually turn over to you, Hope, for Joyce's session.
Okay, so we have been talking very much, but we've got a sister who can provide practical ways of well-being. Her name is Joyce. She's from Uganda. She's a yogi. She's a dancer. She's a feminist. She's packaged in many different, she's packaged very beautifully in different bags. We thought that talking might not be enough. You might want to see what happens in action, even if it might be individual, it might be organizational, because I've known Joyce to work with organizations, to work with movements, to work with individuals in an effort to promote awareness. So I'll ask that we have 2 minutes break, no, 3 minutes break, because that is part of the wellness package. Just go get a glass of water, go and smoke a half cigarette, go to the bathroom, and then come back ready for Joyce, beautiful Joyce, and you see what she can do with her body. We can go beyond 13:30. Nancy said we can have a few more minutes, so don't panic. We still have, a bit of time with us. But for now, for this first part of the session, we want to thank you for choosing yourself, because even that choice, to be aware that you need to be well, to be aware that you need to be part of discussions that promote wellness, to be aware that this is an important project, and to present yourself here should be celebrated. So go and celebrate with water if you have no wine. So 3 minutes, 4 minutes break, and then Joyce will be with us. Thanks very much. And Rudo, let's join the others in working with Joyce. Thank you. Joyce, are we ready?
Yes, we are.
Okay, so you have about 33 minutes. No, actually 13 minutes.
Okay. Hi, everybody.
Yeah.
I'm Joyce Nakiwala, and I am a dance artist, a mover, and I work basically through movement, physical well-being, and awareness. So I'm a yogi, and most of the time I am practicing and I'm walking, I am doing stuff for my body and for myself. So today, the exercise we are going to do is not therapy, but they are therapeutic. So I hope they work for you, and you just try out and see whether, I mean, so many things can come up for you because we are all different, and we can see that we can have different body types, we have different environments, so just find space, and we are going to move. I'll not call it basically dance, but we are going to move our bodies. And the first exercise is going to be sit in front of your computer or your phone, and this computer is going to work as your mirror. And when you're seated in front of it, the first person that you see is yourself. So just imagine that the computer or the phone is your mirror. And the person you're looking at is going to make affirmations or is going to talk or say out what they see. It can be your face, it can be half your body or full of your body. And personally, if I'm to speak out what I see my eyes. I have big eyebrows. I have lines over my forehead. I have white teeth. My lips are wide. My cheeks are big. I look like my father today. And that's the first exercise. So see or say it to yourself and mean it. just a few minutes. If you have a pen or a paper, you can choose to write. And if you've wrote down, or if you've not written down anything, have it in your mind. And at this moment, I would like to invite you inside your brain or your thoughts and circle all the negative words or the affirmations that you have made. Any word that crosses by as negative, circle it. And then any word that crosses by as positive, line it. And from there, I'm going to ask you to listen to yourself. Just take time and listen. And the fact that you're listening to yourself, I would like and invite you to find gratitude. Just check in for gratitude. There's a lot that goes on in the body, probably pain. Some of these things that you carry in the body come from the coronial side, the ancestors. And these things make us ungrounded, make us shaking, make us uncomfortable, not sure of who we are and what we can do. And these are some of the things that I've been discussing. These are some of the things that make everything political. And at this moment, I would call you, if you're seated, sit still, have a straight back. If you'd like to stand, go ahead and stand. And you have choices to close your eyes or find a point of focus. And bring your one hand on your heart, another on your chest. Find stillness. Just listen to your heartbeat. You have choices. You can keep seated or you can stand. But make sure to have your back straight. And concentrate on who you are right now. In these moments, find gratitude. This is where wellness starts from. Find the peace. And from here, allow yourself to shift. If it is moving, either the hand, the feet, just choose one part of your body and move. And as you're doing this, connect your breath to the movement. With breath, I mean be present and gently, for the times you've moved, find stillness. Breathe in and breathe out. Concentrate to you, to the person inside you, your soul, the peace. And gently you can allow yourself to just drop the hands beside your body or your thighs if you're seated. And just take time to see the lines that you cross, the positive lines. And with the positive lines, allow gratitude to land and be there for you. Each time you feel like you're shaking, fall back to gratitude, fall back to positivity. This is your moment, and this is your start or the step for wellness that you're taking. To think about you, think about yourself, think about your peace and what is going on. So stand in your present time and enjoy it. And here I'm going to invite you to just move one part of your body. It can be the hands. Don't think about what you're doing, just do it. It can be the shoulders. Just move. Just keep moving. I mean, as you're doing this, you're just gonna find peace in doing it. Find gratitude. Go ahead. You can choose to move your torso. If you're seated, you can choose to make circles. Just be calm. It's about moving. It's not about being right. It's about moving. And you have choices to close your eyes and feel how you're moving, or to keep the eyes open, but focusing on one point in time. Just keep moving. Be you right now.
Joyce, you are frozen. You are frozen. I don't know if you can hear me. So I don't know what we are going to do. But while Joyce is unfreezing, I want us to think about things that unground us, whether they are political, whether they are social, whether they are personal, whatever it is. Let's sit and think about things that unground us. Think about things that unground our organizations. Think about things that, unground the communities that we work with, our societies. This is something you can do when you get home. And then we also need to think about things that extinguish our fire. Our fire as human beings, things that extinguish our fire, as others. So there is Joyce dancing, showing you what to do as you think about those things that extinguish your fire.
So keep moving, and at this time, find your stillness. You've seen how amazing to learn into positivity comes up. Now you're going to look for those words that you suffered, the negativity. And at this time, you're going to take risks. You're going to move, but see the fire in you to just send it away. And if it means crushing, just keep crushing. Like, go for the power in you. Just step the negativity. Push it away. Sweep. And this is for you, not for anyone else. Sometimes you learn into sweating, but you need it. When you sweat, you're actually letting go so much. So you keep doing it with no judgment. Don't be afraid to just stand around. Just be. If it means pulling up, if it's breathing, breathe out. So either breathing or dying. That's a quote from hope. You're either breathing or dying. So for your organization, swim. Choose to move. If you're running, take it. So you have choices. And gently, you find your stillness. And take time to refresh. refresh. Just bring your heart together. Bring one hand on your heart, another on your belly, and take time to inhale and exhale. Inhale and exhale. So now start accounting yourself as someone who has done great for you. You can choose to just shift from one space to another. If you're seated, change position. If you're standing,
you have 1 minute. You have 1 minute. You have 1 minute to wind up.
And gently, you can choose to open your eyes if you close them, or just smile to yourself and say, I am here, I am present.
Yeah. So thanks very much, Joyce. Thanks very much, Rudo. Thanks so much to the sisters who are here. Very nice to see you. Some of you, we are really, we haven't seen each other for a year, and we are very excited to see you here. Thanks for your contributions. And remember, you can always contact us. You can contact Hope. You can contact Rudo, hopechigudu@yahoo.com. Very easy. rudochigudu@gmail.com. And we are very happy. We'll be very happy to respond to your questions. We wish you a great week. We wish you a great festival. And remember, we have done it. And we have done this because we need to be well. We've done this because we've decided that, we have got to take our lives in our hands and do what we want to do. Thanks very much, Joyce. Thank you. And, we'll meet in the next sessions. Bye.
Women like me don't exist. My ex would always insist that I was a freak of nature. He'd say it with such a straight face, like it was as obvious as the je ne sais quoi of Idris Elba. Baby would say it like it was nothing, but it is everything. The things that I am not are as pertinent as those which I am. For example, I don't own a grocery bag. And on some days that makes me feel like less of a woman. Like if I cooked more, an extra X chromosome would sprout somewhere in my genome. I'd be oozing estrogen through my skin pores. And maybe if I liked heels, only ever picked at my meals, ordered lame things like Caesar salad as a main, not a side, I wouldn't be such a shame to all the educated, sophisticated women out there. And maybe if I didn't pay someone else to do my laundry, if I scrubbed that floor on my knees, if I swept the yard before 6 and still made it to work by 8, if I wasn't such a strong believer in the power of takeaways fit, kicked up on the coffee table, catching up with the news at 8, maybe I wouldn't get breakouts. Maybe I wouldn't get cramps. Maybe the universe would stop punishing me for failing to woman right. I try to woman with all my might, but when you're Black and female, you have to be too many things to way too many people. A marble pillar, a soapstone sculpture, warrior queen, hybrid offspring of St. Joan and Nehanda. No Black girl magic. We only ever get karma. We're damned if we do, damned if we don't. I mean, women these days aren't even allowed to cry anymore. Because showing emotion makes us weak, but if I'm all business, I'm a stone cold bitch. Being uneducated is unattractive, but too many degrees scare men off, and no one ever really tells you where to draw that too many line. Is 1 degree too many degrees? Is it 4? Is it 3? Does it matter if the third is a master's or PhD? Does a specific level add to the too muchness? And girl, you have to answer these questions, because every woman needs a man. That is how you know you've made it. Could be the most powerful person in the world, but without a man to back it, how many of you would buy it? Our value is proportional to whether we are wanted. And most of our dads didn't even want us. We can't propagate the family name. A girl has no name. We're defined by the men around us, by their money, their cars, on rare occasion maybe ours. And yet our truth does not look like Cinderella. We have no fairy godmother, no glass slipper. When we slip up, no prince comes to save us. And we don't fear that midnight clock because our pumpkins never changed to chariots in the first place. Our stepsisters, they are fellow laborers. We're all just trying to get to a place that feels better. We're trying to get comfortable with the way that we look, trying to slot more Black girls into books, trying to believe we are not the embodiment of the curse of Eve, serpent children groveling in the dust, or in glass cases in museums with random strangers and predators poking at us like, you're smart for a ghetto girl, articulate for an African, pretty despite your dark skin. They pit us against ourselves. But we have come to learn we are smart because of these streets. Pretty because of our melanin and froze, articulate because of the clicks trained in our mother tongue. And the family tree isn't rooted entirely in pain. Our destiny calls us to a place beyond where men can ordain. And this isn't the pep talk, rally cry, emancipated Black girl art piece. This is truth revealed. It's God's heart inside people who look like me. See, Black women make protest art to reclaim our divinity. The only deity we've been allowed is fetish, Aphrodite, fertility goddess. But we want queen and empress, where you bow and we don't have to undress to earn your reverence, where we decide how to honor our temples, where the skin is sacred, these hips are an altar, and this face is the image of the Lord God, your creator. And honey, we won't stop with this kind of poetry until you see God in people that look like me.